Hello and welcome back to the Victory Road World Cup tournament. We have one final match. We've saved a really interesting one for closing things out. Once again, I am Hayden McTavish and I am joined by the one, the only, Ben Kiriaki. How are you feeling today, Ben?
I'm feeling great. We've had three fantastic matches on the stream so far. We're past the halfway point. We're now at the final game. That makes it no less important, though. The two teams that we have playing up against each other are both in pretty much do or die scenarios. We have France versus Denmark, two phenomenal players going up against each other. And both teams chasing that win to secure their position in the next round of the tournament.
Yeah, absolutely. Either team, a win will, I think, guarantee that they make it on to the next stage. France maybe can get away with a tie, but you really don't want to leave that up to chance, especially we see France starting 2-0. Really, you just want to close it out with a commanding victory, but Denmark has an awful lot that they can do to sort of find a way to claw their way back in, and a win for either side is such a big deal here.
Massive deal. And we see these two teams have already played two of their matches. France, of course, leading the way 2-0, and with some quite interesting stuff going on. All I'm seeing when I'm looking at these two sets of teams is that Ho-Oh Groudon core with the Dragapult backup. Thomas Gravui, a regional champion in his own country in France, in Lille this year already, piloting that team. Piloting this team completely different to what he's used before against Benjamin from Denmark. Florian Henry, an old guard of a player playing for so many years now, getting a commanding 2-0 victory against Kim from Denmark, and rocking that Kyogre Eveltal composition. Really interesting to see, because it's not a combination that you see in this format. Maybe like 2019 series, maybe 2016, you used to see that sort of combination, but it's really fallen off with the advent of things like Zacian coming into the format.
Yeah, like what's so interesting is there are so many combos that are just like not used quite as often. But when you're in a format like the Victory Road World Cup, you have to worry about everything because your opponent could bring whatever they think is best against what you're going to bring. And I think, not to spoil too much, but we're in for quite a treat for what the players have chosen to bring this time around. Before we get to that, go ahead.
Before we get to that, we're going to see these two players' accomplishments, of course. We have Nicolaj on the left-hand side of your screen, a 2021 World Cup competitor. So played in the previous year's series. Haven't seen what Nicolaj's been able to get up to in the last tournament, but this time around, Nicolaj is 2-0. Most importantly, 2-0 with the same team both weeks. So we'll have to see exactly whether he's bringing the same composition yet again.
On the other side, we have Rayan with a whole lot of top 32 performances. Clearly an accomplished player, knows his way around a circuit, but probably looking for like really establishing himself as like a top player and getting like breaking the streak of Nicolaj's wins with this wonderful team would be a really good way to sort of set yourself apart as a particularly strong player.
Exactly. And so like top 32 seems to be that glass ceiling for Rayan, but we'll see if in the 2022-2023 season he's able to go ahead and get just past that top 32 point and get himself to the next level. As it stands, though, we do need to see what these players are going to be bringing today. We had a preview on the screen. I've been excited. If you've been here from the start, we were talking right early in the stream about this Rayquaza coming out from Nicolaj, using it 2 weeks in a row already, getting 2 victories with it. And I don't know about you, Hayden, like I can't remember the last time I saw a Rayquaza in the 2022 series.
We've seen like just like whispers of it in different places. There's like some reports players have written, like Scott Iwafuchi, around like a Rayquaza, but I haven't seen ever a Rayquaza plus Groudon combination yet, and I'm really excited to see what it can do. Clearly, it can do a lot based on those past 2 matches from Nicolaj. On the other side, though, go ahead.
No, carry on, Hayden. Carry on.
On the other side, though, we have this Gothitelle, and I think whenever you're playing a team that you've already played a couple times before, you know your opponent might have some techs that are specific. And I think it's got to be scary to see a Gothitelle and know, like, if you make a mistake leading, you're just going to be trapped in against whatever your opponent has. And they have a Kyogre that can do so much damage to any of your restricteds. They have a Regieleki that can do so much damage to anything except the Groudon. I think definitely a tough spot to be in, too.
I definitely agree. And, it's a different take on this sort of more standard swordfish build from Rayan. Playing, Kyogreization, sure, has to be that within the composition. Incineroar and Rillaboom, usually two supporting casts. And the last slots are usually that Grimmsnarl and Zapdos, or maybe Thundurus, depending on how you're going to build that composition. But Regieleki makes a big difference in how you play the electric type in that particular team composition. And of course, the Gothitelle, as you said, Hayden, has to be something that you fear going into this game. And especially when you see it coming out, leading with that Incineroar in turn 1, Nicolaj on the field responding with Groudon and the Thundurus. And we'll see if that Thundurus is going to get its Defiant boost.
Yeah, I mean, if Thundurus does, that would be such a big deal. Yes, and it is a Defiant Thundurus. So the challenge of playing Gothitelle, you can't switch in your Thundurus later to try to catch an Incineroar switch in. But Nicolaj just saying, okay, I still don't want you to lead Incineroar. I'm just going to lead my Thundurus, and really paying off for him.
It absolutely is, and that all of that attack coming out from the Thundurus is going to pay dividends here, potentially leading it into whether or not the Incineroar can get knocked out in one in this turn. If it decides to stay on the field and go for Fake Out, it has to take either a Precipice Blades or maybe a Max Airstream, a Max Knuckle from the Thundurus. Nicolaj can start getting set up here. Gothitelle has some options here, and it's going to be really telling what Rayan is going to be bringing to this match, because between Trick Room, between Hypnosis, between Fake Out of its own, that Gothitelle has quite a lot of options, and that's before you start accounting for things like Ally Switch.
Yeah, so Gothitelle, so many options. Nicolaj does not want to deal with any of them, just wants to Dynamax this Thundurus, has an attack boost, do as much damage as you possibly can to stop this Gothitelle before it makes your life a nightmare.
Exactly, as we see the Fake Out coming out from the Gothitelle, not the Incineroar on this occasion. Airstream coming out from the Thundurus, landing into that Gothitelle, not enough to pick up the KO, and not overly surprising. Gothitelle known for a Pokemon with quite a lot of bulk. Groudon, of course, flinching from the Fake Out, and Parting Shot coming out from this Incineroar, going to be dropping the Groudon's attack yet further. Of course, Groudon won't be able to switch out while the Gothitelle is on the field, so Nicolaj is pinned in with a really good Thundurus and a really quite poor Groudon here. So you've got this sort of dichotomy with Nicolaj having one great Pokemon or one particularly bad Pokemon on their side of the field. But I think, looking at this board state, I wouldn't be surprised if Groudon was in a position where it might even be able to pick up the KO on this Gothitelle with a Precipice Blades. And if that Incineroar comes in again to stop the Groudon picking up the KO on Gothitelle, you're just going to activate that Defiant again.
Yeah, I think some really interesting positional playing, Rayan trying to slow down all the Pokemon on Nicolaj's side of the field, and then bring in the Zacian to do a lot of damage. But there's the speed boost coming out and the attack boost on the Thundurus that makes that really tough. And this is still a very neck and neck battle of both sides trying to figure out the right positioning to do damage, to get speed, to slow down damage, to trap things in. There's so much going on.
There absolutely is, and you've got one Max Airstream already. That means the Thundurus is faster than the Zacian on Rayan's side of the field, and so with another Max Airstream, the Groudon is almost certainly going to be faster than the Zacian, and not a position that the Zacian usually likes to be in. But of course, with that Intimidate and Parting Shot combination, I think the Zacian can probably stand to sit in front of the Groudon a little bit, but when that Thundurus decides to attack into that slot, it's gonna cause Rayan some problems.
Yeah, we'll have to see how well the Zacian can survive. It does. All eggs in one basket here. There's a helping hand on the Zacian. It's ready to do a whole lot of damage, but it has to take this Airstream first, and it might have to take a Precipice Blades too.
Yeah,
the Airstream just fine?
Absolutely, just absolutely fine, and really shrugging that off. And of course, the Groudon with its Precipice Blades is going to be free to attack next. Probably going to be enough to take it down to low. Definitely in range of another Max Airstream. That Gothitelle does lead the field, so Groudon can be reset for Nicolaj if they so choose. And Behemoth Blade with that helping hand boost, no Intimidate, of course, able to come out from Nicolaj's side of the field, is going to launch into that Thundurus. And does it pick up a KO? Oh, not
Such
quite.
A clutch survival. And we see a berry too, restoring hit points on Thundurus. This is such an interesting Thundurus set. I think ordinarily maybe Rayan's plan was you set up the Incineroar, you slow down the Groudon, and then you can do this Helping Hand Behemoth Blade. That'll normally take out a Thundurus, right? And Nicolaj just has such an interesting set that like this Thundurus is both becoming really scary, but also doing speed control and also surviving attacks. Definitely a lot for Rayan to keep in mind in the future.
Yeah, like normally when you see Thundurus, you see maybe those Assault Vest sets and be a little bit bulkier, but not really to that level. I mean, the amount of investment in this Thundurus to be able to do that must be pretty significant, and maybe an indication that Nicolaj is happy to maybe not train the Thundurus to be quite as aggressive, or maybe not quite as fast, in order for it to take those attacks a lot better. As it stands, the Kyogre's coming in. It's in a fairly good position here in that it's going to be able to launch an attack and go for its Dynamax factor now. Those big Max Geysers are going to be doing a massive amount of damage. But equally, there's a really powerful Thundurus in front of you, and you don't want to take those hits.
Yeah, Thundurus having this +1 attack boost has totally set the tempo of this match, and we're going to be able to see the Zacian's able to protect. So maybe this Kyogre can pick up a clutch KO. Zacian's not going to go down this turn, but this Max Lightning at +1 attack, we know this Thundurus is bulky, so it might not do as much, but oh, that's almost a complete KO on this Kyogre. That is not good for Rayan.
No, not at all. You don't want your max Pokemon to be taking so much damage, especially after your opponent has already got those speed boosts. Groudon coming in here with the Precipice Blades follow-up. Not missed a single Precipice Blade so far, and the Max Geyser does go off. Kyogre living on just a sliver here. Going into that Thundurus, gonna be enough to pick up the knockout. No problems whatsoever. Taking the Pokemon count 3-3. Incredible reads from Nicolaj there, but just not quite being able to knock out the Kyogre is massive and really does flip this game on its head. I've just seen though, Hayden, there's a cheeky item sitting on this Rayquaza right here.
Yeah, I was thinking this might be a really tough way to play around. Like if you get a Precipice Blades miss on the Zacian, then it can kind of outspeed everything. But we know, and Rayan does not yet know, that this Rayquaza has a Choice Scarf. So it's able to for sure guarantee a KO on whatever it would like this turn. That's such an interesting set on Rayquaza. It wasn't even in the realm of possibility of things I was thinking about it having.
Yeah, like it's one of those middling speed tiers, but equally it's one of those Pokemon that's got access to Max Airstream, and normally when a Pokemon has access to Max Airstream, that's really all you want to do with it. As it stands though, is Zacian in fact getting confused between the restricted Pokemon here, is going to be switching out for that Incineroar, a third Intimidate launching out onto that Groudon, or a third attack drop should I say. Precipice Blades coming out, connecting on both targets. I really need to talk to Nicolaj about where he's trained his Groudon, because man, I wish my Groudon could hit all of these Precipice Blades itself. Knocking out the Kyogre does proc a Sugar Berry on the Incineroar, making it take almost no damage, but of course the follow-up with Earth Power here coming out from the Rayquaza is going to take it into knockout range again. Now Zacian comes back in. I don't know, Hayden, what do you think, whether or not this Groudon has enough in the tank to be able to knock out this Zacian this turn?
I would find it immensely satisfying if this Groudon landed 7 Precipice Blades in a row to win this set. I would love to see that. That said, I think probably the play from Rayan is that like you maybe try to control the Groudon. It's really low attack, and then you're able to take out the Rayquaza. I'm not sure if maybe Rayan has a way around, or if maybe this Choice Scarf's going to catch him off guard. But we do see the big one into Rayquaza.
Yeah, not going to catch him off guard at all this turn. Fake out stopping that Rayquaza moving first. But oh my god, 7 Precipice Blades in a row. Double knockout. That means Groudon has got 3 knockouts already this game. Has had its attack dropped 3 times in a row. That's going to seal up the game and give the first game to Nicolaj. So Nicolaj really coming in strong here, taking a convincing win in that game. Didn't feel like Nicolaj was under pressure at all. All of that power control coming out from Rayan's side of the field, just like shrugging it off and saying, do you know what? Precipice Blades is super effective against 2 of the Pokemon at least. I'm just gonna keep hitting the button.
Yeah, absolutely. I think like there was so much to control the damage. Like that Kyogre surviving was such a clutch turn. Like that would have mattered so much ordinarily in a set. But here there were just like so many ways to just like keep clicking Precipice Blades, and you got the speed set up, and suddenly this Groudon was the most terrifying thing in his existence. If I could have a Groudon that outspeeds everything and always hits Precipice Blades, this Groudon is the most impressive thing I've seen all year.
Yeah, wide lens confirmed, I think. Wide lens confirmed. It's probably not wide lens. But anyway, yeah, like I think really, when you break this down though, game one, I think in a lot of ways came down to quite a lot of force plays from Rayan with the way that Rayan led into Thunderous Groudon. And it's something that he's going to have to adjust for in game two, because when you set that Thunderous up in the way that you do, without a way to really, control that at all, if you're going for Fake Out rather than your support options on Gothitelle and allowing it to get that max airstream off, you have to do something later in the game to remove it. Otherwise, you're just going to be fighting an uphill battle. You can't bring your Incineroar in again. And so you're so restricted. And I think that just played out a lot of these forced turns that Nicolaj was able to capitalize on massively.
Yeah, I think it's really. I normally think about like the Gothitelle mind game as something that can turn out really well for the Gothitelle player, and we totally just saw it go the other way around. If you can stop the Gothitelle from going for like trapping something in that isn't useful, that's just such a valuable thing to have.
It really is. And going to game two here, same leads coming out from Nicolaj, just trusting the Groudon and the Thunderous that did him so well in game one. Rayan coming out with the Gothitelle and the Kyogre. A switch up here, but not necessarily in Ryan's favor, at least on the offset, because that Kyogre has found itself in the sun.
Yeah. One interesting fact to bust out from last time, Nicolaj made a switch up, I think, here to make the Thunderous be defiant from like previously it not being. So this is just like a wonderful team adaptation that's totally thrown Rayan onto the back foot. And now we're seeing the adjustment of the Kyogre and the Gothitelle to sort of see if you can switch it up and use Gothitelle a little bit better.
Yeah, that's a really interesting way to play the same team, because a lot of the times when you're building a team, there's a lot of options that you have to give a go. As it stands, we're seeing a aggressive turn one here, going straight for the Dynamax. I believe that's Rayan going for the Kyogre Dynamax there, and going to be setting up probably the Rain with a Max Geyser, especially now that there isn't any attack boost coming out from this Thunderous. Is going to be able to take those attacks a little bit better, but of course Nicolaj has the opportunity to go on the offensive as well. We've seen how defensively capable the Thunderous was in game one, but this time we saw that the Groudon was hitting its Precipice Blades. Nicolaj not wanting to risk Precipice Blades number 8 and 9, not quite hitting, going for the Dynamax on the Groudon. Probably a good thing. Is Helping Hand coming into the Kyogre. We do see the Eerie Impulse still on the set. Defiant Thunderous with that tech move, going to be dropping Kyogre's special attack stat here, going for the Max Hailstorm into the Thunderous. Did so much damage. Even with the Eerie Impulse, that may have been a critical hit.
A lot of damage, but not quite enough to take out this Thunderous. It's just sitting here. It's eating its berry, and it's back to like being so disruptive. We saw it Max last time.
Oh my god.
And now it's just supporting with a Max Lightning Groudon. What's happening? That's amazing.
I thought that the electric type on the field was the Thunderous, but it turns out it's the Groudon in this matchup. Really quite a nice turn, actually. I mean, the Hail coming up isn't quite as good for Rayan as the Rain going up, because now there's a little bit of a question mark in my mind, certainly, whether or not this Groudon will be able to survive the Max Geyser, even with the helping hand boost, of course, as well. And looking at the damage there, I mean, we see that the Kyogre took nearly half from the Max Lightning coming out from the Groudon, and now it's like in electric terrain and boosted up even further. So definitely going to be able to pick up the KO on the Kyogre here if Nicolaj wants to.
Yeah, I think such incredible work being put in by this combo of Thunderous Groudon. You can't slow it down with Incineroar the way you normally would, but the Thunderous still has this supportive move pool that like this Kyogre just Dynamax, but it's at -2 special attack, and this Thunderous has even more supportive moves to throw out too.
Exactly, and now this Incineroar comes in for the Gothitelle. We'll see if that sort of comes to the test. I think this is probably worth your while if you're Rayan, because you have to slow down the Max Groudon. It's not like the first game where you just kind of want to. Now when it's in its Dynamax form and the Kyogre is under threat of being knocked out, from this combination of Scary Face slowing it down. The follow-up by Groudon is enough to pick up the KO, is going to knock it out. Kyogre only getting one turn of max here. Incineroar probably not feeling great, just being coming into the field and not having the support of that Kyogre left to it. A little bit of hail chip damage, but now Nicolaj has one more turn of Dynamax and a boosted Thunderous. It feels like quite an uphill battle for Rayan.
Yeah, absolutely. If there is a way to turn it around, it might start with the Zacian here. Able to outspeed Pokemon because there's no max Airstreams going up. But definitely such a tough blow to lose your Kyogre. I thought that was going to be such a close roll, bringing in the Incineroar to intimidate the Groudon. I didn't think Electric Terrain would balance that out, but maybe it's almost something I'd wonder whether that Groudon has a special electric move. That can't be the case.
I don't think it is. It'd be really quite unlikely to see, especially after we saw the Precipice Blades.
Yeah.
And of course, there was a little bit of hail chip going on, a little bit of residual damage as well. Maybe that tipped it over the edge. But yeah, I do agree with you, Hayden. The margins were pretty fine on that.
Absolutely. So we'll have to see how you can handle the Zacian here. There is a fake out momentum here, so Thunderous can't do anything on this turn. And Zacian gets a substitute up, which is a really big deal. You're able to stall out that last max turn, presumably. We'll have to see what Groudon goes for, if it just removes the substitute, or if it takes out this Incineroar, or starts to. We will see just sort of a neutral turn here, but that's a neutral turn's a pretty big deal when the past two turns were so commanding, and now there is no Dynamax Groudon that you have to worry about on the field.
No, not at all. And this Thunderous looks like it might get knocked out from the hail there, so Fake Out. I've definitely trained to knock out this Thunderous in this exact situation here.
And it was on one hit point!
Oh my god! Right, okay, so that changes the board state significantly. Nicolaj may have been looking at that turn thinking, ooh, do I get a nice little momentum grab? Do I get the switch in from Thunderous? No, instead, the Thunderous survives on the field, and that's huge for Nicolaj because that Thunderous has a boosted attack. It does mean that the Zacian is going to have to target it down if it wants to stop this Thunderous attacking, and that leaves Groudon free to do what it's been doing all this set so far and just launch out Precipice Blades. Fingers crossed, ladies and gentlemen, that it keeps on hitting for Nicolaj.
How long will the Precipice Blade streak go? We are going to see, I think, the Thunderous switch out, which is interesting. Sort of just you preserve that momentum to switch in later. You get some Intimidate off, which might be really valuable to protect your Groudon. I think that's really interesting. If the Zacian goes to try to take out the Thunderous, that's like such a huge loss of momentum from Rayan's side.
Yeah, especially as you may be able to burn this Shuka Berry. Zacian, though, not falling for it, just wanting to allow the hail to do the business here and protecting itself. We see the Precipice Blade hit again. That is number 8, if I'm keeping count here. In a row, the Incineroar takes a little bit of damage, as it did in previous games, and goes for the parting shot. This Groudon will not be doing too much work. Vastly different board state for the Groudon than it was in the last games where, we got to this state where it had 3 drops in its attack and most things were, pretty much knocked out. At this stage, Rayan's got a lot more health left on the field, and so, nicer position here for the Groudon as we get some Hail Chip coming onto the field.
Such a perfectly timed parting shot into the Gothitelle to get this Groudon down to -2 attack. Set up like your fake out pressure and make sure that it can't switch out. And a really good adjustment by Nicolaj to switch in an Incineroar to adjust for that so that you still have some parting shot ability to sort of like change who's out front. And you've got this fake out into the Zacian that's already burned its Protect. So if this Groudon keeps hitting Precipice Blades, it is still going to keep doing damage.
It is, but of course, we don't know the speed interaction between Gothitelle and Incineroar. I believe they're both naturally pretty much on par with each other speed-wise, so it will come down to how they've been trained as to whether the Gothitelle is a little bit of a speedier one. Maybe it's a slower one to take advantage of Trick Room, but not seeing too many Trick Room abusers on Rayan's team. And so probably going to be the Gothitelle here that goes first with the fake out of the 2 Pokemon that are able to do so.
Yeah, absolutely. So you can fake out either Pokemon you'd like if you're on Rayan's side. You can probably stop the Incineroar from pivoting out or fake outing. Or you can stop the Groudon. We're going to have to see which one it goes for. It goes for the Groudon. So this Incineroar has a chance to... it had a chance to parting shot, but with the pressure of that Zacian, it had to just go for fake out. And now Rayan has fake out pressure, a -3 Groudon at least. and a whole lot that maybe he's able to do to sort of start pivoting this momentum back.
Yeah, do you know what I want to see, Hayden? I want to see some hypnosis coming out. Blind hypnosis coming in from Rayan's side of the field, because I kind of feel like, why would you not at this stage if you have access to it? You know, the Groudon's now at -3, I believe, or it could be -4. I'm not quite keeping as good account as the breath of his blades. It's definitely not doing a lot of damage, right? And so now the Gothitelle has a lot of agency to do a lot of different things. This turn, it's going to be a taunt. Gothitelle finally avoids an attack here. That Precipice Blades doesn't do any damage. Does a little bit more damage to the Incineroar, of course, as well. That Parting Shot taking it down even further. And now it's looking like Zacian likely to come in and feeling pretty good about its position.
Yeah, absolutely. A really neat taunt, too, that you don't have to worry about this Incineroar parting shotting as the Zacian comes in. It might do something else that's disruptive, but that's a big gain for like this attempt at a positional game to bring Zacian back in and just take some KOs.
Yeah, because, you know, you don't often see the taunt coming out from Gothitelle. It's got so many shenanigans that it can pull, so to speak. We're seeing the Darkest Lariat, though, finishing off the turn from that Incineroar, doing respectable damage to the Gothitelle, and probably meaning that that Incineroar is now in the firing line of the Zacian that's come in.
Yeah, I think a whole lot of damage potential here, especially because we know the Gothitelle's helping hand. Zacian can probably just KO whatever it would like this turn. But you are still down a Pokemon, and maybe there's something that Nicolaj can do to sort of try to get momentum back after you lose a Pokemon.
Yeah, exactly. A helping hand, you called it absolutely right. Coming out here, Sacred Sword into the Incineroar. Going to be enough to knock it out pretty convincingly. I'm not sure there was any way that Incineroar could be trained to have survived that attack. Groudon only hitting the Gothitelle this time, so no damage extra on the Zacian. And that's a pretty good position for Rayan to be in. It doesn't want to take any damage really at all for the Zacian if he can avoid it. And of course, we know that Rayquaza is in the back. It is carrying a Choice Scarf. And so we'll have to see if there's any like speed control options onto the Gothitelle now, because you can basically ignore the Groudon, right? It's like -4, -5 roughly. And all you want to do is be targeting the slot that isn't Groudon here.
Yeah, I think an important question this round, though, is the Rayquaza having a Choice Scarf, is that known to Rayan? And is that something that, like, you can play around with, like, a Protect and an attack from Gothitelle or an Ally Switch? Or is that just going to totally flip this careful game plan that Rayan had that, like, I don't think you yet know that the Rayquaza has Choice Scarf. I don't think it's been revealed in this set. And that would just totally, like, if you lose the Zacian, you cannot win the game. You do not have enough damage.
No, and, you know, with the amount of damage that the Zacian has already taken, probably in KO range for an Earth Power. Of course, you've also got the Incineroar in the back for Rayan, and, you know, if you switch it in this turn, you're further reducing damage from the Groudon, of course, as Rayan has been doing for the rest of the set, but you also get the ability to pin a Pokemon. Even if the Groudon does get the opportunity to switch out, maybe that's okay in this scenario. You know, you switch the Incineroar in as happening now, you protect the Zacian. Next turn, if Rayan does know about the Scarf already, if it has been revealed from game 1, then you just fake out and play rough into that slot, and you're really in quite a good spot.
Yeah, absolutely. Some really brilliant positional play here. Does get the call correctly that the Earth Power goes into the Protect. And this Precipice Blades at -5 attack we now know from the Groudon. Nicolaj helpfully showing us the screen to remind us how many drops there are. Isn't going to be able to pick up the Incineroar, and that's such a huge deal.
That's crazy, isn't it? I've never really seen Incineroar take that little damage. This is not normally a situation you get in, right? You can't usually intimidate and Parting Shot a Groudon quite this much in a set. I'm kind of looking out for the Parting Shot here on the Groudon. Kind of want to see it go to -6 just for, you know, a little bit of style points here. Don't think that's going to quite happen, but we can hope. We can definitely hope.
I think a really big factor here is saving this Thundurus on 1 hit point. Let's Nicolaj undo all of Rayan's hard work, where otherwise that wouldn't be possible. And I think that might be really decisive in this match, being able to sort of reset the Groudon's attack and try to go for something from there.
Yeah, I mean, no -6 happening here. The Thundurus coming in for the Groudon. Fake out, of course, landing into the Rayquaza, and the Zacian going for a substitute. And That's probably pretty big in this position, especially with a fake out in the back. You can probably lock out this game with Gothitelle and Gothitelle and the Zacian if you allow the Incineroar to parting shot or go down this turn. Could be something that Nicolaj has to be careful of positioning. You just have to be really careful with how you try and take knockouts here.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's definitely a way to win for Rayan, but it's still like, how do you do damage to that Groudon? That's definitely going to be tough. And you kind of like, you see like going for the substitute, you need to be able to sort of set up to be able to do as much damage as possible and get through that Groudon. Zacian just going to protect to preserve the substitute because you need it for later.
Yeah, it's one of those nice plays when you've got the substitute up and you're like, you know what? I'm probably not going down to anything this turn, but I'm going to protect because now I put a substitute on the field and you're really scared of it. Nice passing shot here coming in from Incineroar. And of course, Nicolaj, unfortunately for him going for the double up into the Zacian, it's a really good play there from Rayan, just piloting this game plan perfectly. And of course, now that you've got the substitute, you're free to go for the fake out into the Thunderous slot, most likely. We've seen all of the move options it has. It has at least an electric move, a flying move. We've seen Scary Face. We've seen Eerie Impulse. And so fake out's definitely going to do 1 damage to the Thunderous. And the Rayquaza is able to break the substitute, which you have to try and do. But equally, if you don't, you're just going to take a lot of damage onto the Rayquaza slot, whether that's a Groudon or a Rayquaza. If you don't try and break the substitute, and then the substitute's still there next turn.
Yeah, I think. But we're actually going to see a helping hand coming up from the Gothitelle. Maybe still not aware that this Rayquaza has the Earth Power option that will go before the Zacian, and that's going to be pretty crucial. The substitute's going to go down before Groudon's out on the field. Zacian can definitely get a KO, but an interesting play here to see that the substitute's down. Something's going down to Behemoth Blade, probably the Rayquaza. But this Thunderous does have an opportunity to sort of retaliate and maybe get some damage or support off into the Zacian.
Yeah, so I think this is quite telling as well, because you kind of feel like you want to be hitting the play rough button unless you feel like you can avoid it. A really clever play here from Rayan, being able to just launch a helping hand Behemoth Blade. No way that anything, whether it's the Groudon or the Rayquaza, would be able to take that attack. And so nicely played. Also, considering that Wild Charge is one of the options that Thunderous has, especially on the Defiant set, we know it does recoil. So, why waste a turn faking it out if you know that it's just going to KO itself? Little bit risky, because if the Zacian did go down to that double up, it would have put Rayan in a pretty difficult scenario, but Zacian hanging on like a champ and taking those knockouts quite handily.
Yeah, I think it's such a tough play. Oh, we'll have to see if Behemoth Blade is enough now to finish this off. This might just be the deciding turn of the game. If Groudon can survive, it will get a Precipice Blades off and potentially just take things down to just Incineroar. But if it faints, and it does, then that's the game for Rayan. Very, very impressive. I was so sure that Rayan was going to lose this set and just like totally proved me wrong.
Yeah, the helping hand coming in absolutely clutch there, and so many scenarios, so many board states that were really pivotal in the match. And of course, without the helping hand support, without that taunt locking that Incineroar in, without the positioning that Gothitelle allowed Rayan to have, taking that Groudon down to 5 stages of attack drops, gave Rayan the space to come back after losing that Kyogre so early, and that's so impressive.
Yeah, I think I want to take a step back and just talk about like that endgame was so intricate. And I think I was imagining a totally different win condition than what Rayan actually found, that like it's okay if your substitute goes down there. You really need to block that Groudon switch in, because otherwise you would lose. And Rayan just sort of like being able to catch that and knowing that at the end all you need is that helping hand Behemoth Blade. You don't need to take an attack from Groudon, you can just take it out.
Yeah, exactly. So some information revealed there in game 2. Notably, the Groudon is an electric type this game. And so you've got to go back to the drawing board again, I think, if you're Rayan, because the only reason that match was so uphill was that the Kyogre was in a difficult spot from turn 1. And so, like, the question is how do you position yourself so that you have a little bit of an easier time in the early game to just sort of have a little bit more of a comfortable end game? Because what Nicolaj is bringing is just so well constructed and really difficult, it seems, for Rayan to stop.
Looks like we're seeing the same leads in Game 3 as Game 2. We'll have to see if there's an adjustment maybe in play to sort of stop the tyranny of the electric-type Groudon, or if there's something else that's going to be going on here.
Yeah, I think, because in this position, either Pokemon could go for the max here. We could see the Thundurus go for its max lightning again, and we saw how much damage Groudon did to the Kyogre with its own max lightning. And you think, like, maybe a combination of max lightning from the Thundurus, followed up by a Thunder Punch, which would then be boosted by the electric terrain that Thundurus sets up, could be enough for a knockout there. Like, I feel like it'll be close, but there's definitely a different way to play that. And of course, the more damage you do onto the Kyogre, maybe you knock it out this turn, the closer Incineroar is to coming in and that Thundurus to getting the boosts.
Absolutely. I think like this the story of this set is the story of how much Thundurus can stop this like very disruptive setup from Rayan. We are going to see a different choice of Dynamax here from Nicolaj, as sort of a spoiler from what we saw before. And then we're also going to see this Kyogre Dynamaxing once more. So we'll have to see sort of how much damage is Nicolaj able to get off, how much damage is he going to take in return from this Kyogre being able to get off like a full-powered Max Geyser or a Max Hailstorm.
Yeah, it's never going to happen, but it would be really cool to see that Gothitelle going for the max as a switch-up option. Wouldn't do anything at all, but it'd just be really cool to see. As we see, of course, Nicolaj is going to max the other Pokemon here, going for that Thundurus. The actual electric type likely going for an actual electric move into the Kyogre slot. Rayan does have the opportunity to maybe guard against this, but is going on the offensive yet again, is going for the attacks with Kyogre, maybe into that Thundurus again. We do see an Airstream though, boosting the speed of the Groudon, and probably for one of the first times in the match other than turn 1 game 2, we do see Groudon attacking with all of its attack stat. Coming out here with the Precipice Blades. Unfortunately, avoided by Gothitelle, but does land the hit onto the Kyogre, which is, I think, the really significant Pokemon to be hitting. Max Hailstorm, not enough to pick up the KO. We saw it didn't pick up the KO after an Eerie Impulse last game, so no surprises there. And the Citrus Berry taking it away from being KO'd by the Hail, which is pretty big.
Yeah, I think such an interesting recognition sort of from Nicolaj that like that last game was hard because Groudon was slow. It's okay if it's like low on attack side, it just have to get that speed boost on it early. And I think a really commanding way to do so, to sort of like you risk the Groudon getting KO'd, but it manages to survive and you're able to do that Airstream into Precipice Blades. And now you have just so much offensive momentum because this Thundurus just keeps surviving all of those Hailstorms and attacks.
Yeah, you kind of wonder here if like you have to capitalize on the position if you're Nicolaj and go into the Gothitelle here, remove the trap. Maybe you have to like risk the Thundurus here and just know that you're going to get enough damage on the Groudon. It's going to get 2 attacks off. If the Thundurus doesn't go down, then it can keep launching Airstreams and keep doing things into Nicolaj's side of the field and get the speed boost on something else.
Absolutely. There's so much that Nicolaj is able to do, but definitely some tools that Rayan still has. We're going to see the Incineroar come in, maybe threaten some pick out later, but it's going to give this Thundurus an attack boost. So this Thundurus has so much it can do in these last 2 turns of Dynamax.
Yeah, it can. Another Max Airstream would be pretty pivotal here, doing even more damage. Probably enough to pick up the KO, and it does land it onto the Kyogre. So no more damage from Rayan's Kyogre. Another speed boost on the Groudon, guaranteeing that the Groudon and the Thundurus are going to be faster than Zacian, that is most likely in the back. So lots of pressure coming out here. A single target Precipice Blades, only at 1 stage of decreased attack, does land into the Incineroar. Sugar Berry gets activated, but it's still going to be doing a big old chunk to Incineroar. Not going to be appreciating that at all, especially with the extra Hail Chip that's coming out on the field here. And I feel certainly that this game, Nicolaj has put himself in a very commanding position just by switching up that turn 1 play.
I love the word you used there. Only -1 attack. Normally, that's something that's like such this huge thing to get on a Groudon. It's like, oh, I reduced its attack. But we know for this set, like, you have to just keep stacking those Intimidate drops, and not being able to do that as well, and having this Groudon be able to fire off some, not quite, but close to full damage Precipice Blades, is a really big deal, especially when, like, every attack drop right now comes at the cost of making Thundurus stronger.
Yeah, exactly. It's going to be so impactful with how much damage this Thundurus is doing. You can't fake it out just yet as well. Like, there's so many parts of this position that are really hard for Rayan. He's so on the defensive, and of course doesn't really have any damage on the field to speak of. So, you know, with a Zacian in the back, it's going to have to do so much work. But, you know, with only -1 stages of a decreased attack, that Groudon is putting on much more pressure than it did in the last game. And it just feels like such an uphill battle for Zacian to do all of the damage to all of the Pokemon.
Absolutely. We're going to see some fake outs go out. A fake out into Thundurus almost takes the KO, which would have been amazing, but doesn't quite. And the Max Lightning is going to finish off this Incineroar. That was such an interesting play. If that fake out had gotten a KO, that could have totally flipped things.
Yeah, and you think maybe like a double KO could have maybe picked it up, but you'd have to survive a Precipice Blades. What I'm wondering though, because the Thundurus is going back to its normal form, the Hail ticks first before it goes back. I was thinking, looking at that HP range from what we saw in the previous match, or previous set, that maybe that was getting into KO range, but just not quite. Thundurus hanging on 4 hit points.
This is such an interesting way of playing Thundurus, just having so much bulk on it, from it originally being a defensive set, but still having Defiance, that it's got all of this extra pressure. I'm really impressed by Nicolaj's adjustment here, and this Thundurus is just like, it survived at 1 or 2 hit points every single game. So impressive.
Really is, and you know, just goes to show how training your Pokemon a little bit can be so impactful, because you know every last bit of training has mattered in this set. Zacian though, going for the Protect, just not wanting to take any damage here, probably wanting the Hail to tick down that Thundurus and do all of the work, of course. Gothitelle blocking any switch outs here. Wild Charge going into the Protect, Precipice Blades going into both Protects here, and of course Thundurus is going to be going down to that Hail. So not a lot happening on the field, no damage, except for the one piece of damage that matters, and that is the last bit of HP left on that Thundurus.
So awesome to be able to get rid of that Thundurus, but it definitely comes at a cost. Like, you've burned your Protect on Zacian now, and so like you're able to just sort of bring in Incineroar, and you can threaten that fake out and go for a whole lot more Precipice Blades.
Yeah, and you know that's gonna be pretty impactful here, but Rayan does have the ability to go for a switch here, where Nicolaj doesn't, and so, you know, that revolving door of Incineroars coming through this match probably going to be continuing, because you just have to keep your Zacian doing as much as possible. And I don't think maybe you don't switch out the Zacian here, but you definitely want to try and play a little bit defensively. Fortunately, double Protect doesn't work. Precipice Blades landing into Gothitelle and the Zacian. Taunt coming out from the Gothitelle into the Incineroar, gonna stop any sort of parting shots here, but we saw a Flare Blitz being locked in. That's gonna go into the Zacian easily enough to pick up the knockout, and I think that's really gonna be the last nail in the coffin, so to speak, for Rayan. And it looks like Nicolaj is going to be taking this match.
Yeah, absolutely. I think poor little Gothitelle, we've seen it doesn't have any attacking moves, and it's just Gothitelle left, so definitely not possible for Rayan to be able to get this back. Nicolaj thinking about showing off the wonderful Thunder Punch here. And we're going to see a pretty quick closing out of this game. Just Rayan knocking in the forfeit.
Yeah, and what a well-played set. I mean, you know, we saw the leads the same as Game 2 in Game 3, but what a difference in how the decision to Dynamax a different Pokemon made in that match. I mean, like, you take the like pretty scrappy set Rayan playing at a fantastic endgame in Game 2, but after the Thundurus went for that max and Nicolaj identified that, okay, you know, the Groudon was good, did like it going for the max, it did some work there, knocked out the Kyogre, in the early game. just didn't have that amount of sustain needed to, keep dishing out that damage in the late game. Turns out that those airstreams are pretty good and allow you to get into great positions in this format. And so, yeah, just that adjustment makes such a difference.
I thought it was so interesting to see like a Dynamax Pokemon played primarily as support to a restricted rather than being played as like the main source of damage on its own. But especially because it wasn't just support, it was support by making sure that the opponent couldn't bring Intimidate, because then you just switch plans and the other Pokemon is threatening. And I thought that was so interesting to see in both Game 1 and Game 3, this Thundurus doing just so much work.
Yeah, and especially like, given it had the options to do some other things, just targeting down exactly what you need that Thundurus to do, especially after a couple of games, you've kind of got a feel for what's going on. Nicolaj read that perfectly and adjusted so well. Great game to both players, really well played. And unfortunately for us and for you at home, it is going to be the end of our stream today. We have so much more to play for. We've got loads of matches going on. We've got some really notable picks here. I have to make a little bit of a shout out here. Team UK representing tomorrow in the match against Malaysia should be a really exciting game. And I can tell you, we've been playing, we played two weeks so far. The UK needs to win the match against Malaysia to even have a chance of qualifying. Malaysia only need to draw to get through, and so it's gonna be a really important set. Of course, as well, a little bit of a shout out to Hirofumi and Alexander playing as well. Japan versus Austria, two fantastic players that I cannot wait to see their matches. That's going to be coming to you at 2 p.m. UTC tomorrow, so make sure you put that in your diaries. Make sure you're here well in time, because these are going to be absolutely phenomenal matches that are going on. Of course, if you haven't been keeping up with everything that's going on, first of all, why would you not be? If you're not already, do have a look at all of the socials here. We have the Twitter, the YouTube, Twitch, and the Discord. You can follow all of these channels and keep up to date with everything that's happening in the World Cup tournament. Hosted by Victory Road, sponsored by Elgato, Metafy, and GG Tour. And of course, if you're already following them, keep up to date as well with the World Cup VGC website. So much information on there, such a great resource. But for now, that's going to be it from us. We've had some fantastic matches. It's been absolutely great to be bringing this to you today. So from me, Ben, and from Hayden, thank you everyone for watching, and we will see you tomorrow, 2 p.m. UTC.